Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Adoption Happy Hour brought to you by the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, where it is our mission to unify the adoption community and elevate our diverse voices by promoting dialogue, understanding, and healing through education, awareness, and connection. I'm Marcie Keithley, Board President, along with Jennifer Falsing in the Zoom room and Beth Sturry. Also co-hosting with me this evening is my good friend Kara Rubinstein Deyerin. So give her a shout out as well. So we're going to do something a little bit different this evening. So just sit tight for a few minutes. We want to remind everyone this is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential. Portions of this event are recorded and may be shared in our private happy hour group on Facebook. We ask that you please remain on mute. If you have a question, please raise your virtual hand. You're welcome to use the chat bar and make comments or post any questions that you have. We also want to remind you, if you are experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thought, to please contact a licensed professional or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Have anything else, Jen?
I'm going to add 988, the new number, dial 988.
That's right. Yeah, we've got to update that.
No, we'll talk about some of the other things later on, but if you want to tell them a little bit about Paul, then we'll play him a video.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, so let's learn a little bit about Paul for those of you that have not met him or heard about him. Well, although I find that a little hard to believe. But Paul Fronczak is a military veteran, musician, and former actor who now works for a nonprofit organization devoted to changing lives. 10 years ago, Paul took a DNA test that disproved the story he'd been told about his identity, that he was baby Fronczak, the infant who'd been kidnapped from a Chicago hospital in an infamous 1964 crime. In an instant, he became a man without a name, birthday, or medical history, an unidentified living person in official terminology. Paul has spent the last 10 years searching for answers and looking for the real Paul Fronczak. I'm on a mission, he says, and I can't stop until I find out what happened. An avid bass guitarist and motorcyclist, Paul now lives in Las Vegas and has a daughter he calls the greatest kid in the world. Paul has also dedicated himself to helping other people on their own journeys. To live a lie isn't living at all. The truth is out there. We just have to find it. So welcome, Paul, to Happy Hour. We're so glad to have you this evening, and you're on mute. So there you go. Great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here. It's quite an honor.
We're so excited to have you, aren't we, Kara?
Absolutely. I was so looking forward to the Friday today.
Yeah, we just thought that this would be a good idea to talk a little bit more about Summit because we have all these announcements that are going to be coming out soon. Thus, Kara is joining me this evening, and we're just going to have the conversation with Paul and let everybody know what we anticipate happening in March of 2023. And without giving Paul's entire story away, we just want to talk a little bit about Summit. He's going to just share a little bit about himself. So we'd like to start out with sharing a video, right, Paul?
Yes, this is from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I just posted 2 days ago.
You're a little bit quiet, just so you know.
Too quiet?
That's good when you lean forward a little.
I know she's out there, and I think that this picture is someone's gonna remember something, because I really feel that she's alive.
Investigators hope this new image created by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children will help this man find his missing sister. Paul Fronczak is on a mission to find his twin sister, Jill.
2 children in the same family just can't go missing without someone noticing.
Paul's search for Jill is all part of his own unimaginable journey. It all began in April 1964 when a newborn baby boy was abducted from a Chicago hospital. The shocking news made headlines across the country as investigators tried to find baby Paul. His parents, Dora and Chester Fronczak, were heartbroken. Then, more than a year later, on July 2nd, 1965, a young boy was found abandoned in a stroller in a New Jersey parking lot. Investigators eventually determined through photos and interviews that the toddler was the same baby stolen from that Chicago hospital, more than 700 miles away. The FBI reunited the baby with the Fronczaks.
They decided through all these painstaking searches that I was the only boy out of 10,000 that they couldn't rule out 100%. Because Paul in the hospital never had a blood test or fingerprints.
Paul says he had a wonderful childhood and never questioned his identity until the day he went snooping for Christmas presents. He was 10 years old.
I see all these boxes in the back of the crawl space, and I thought, that's it, the big score. I found the presents. And I started opening the boxes, and they weren't presents at all. They were sympathy cards, newspaper headlines, missing boy in Chicago, manhunt drags on in Sad City, Paul Joseph Fronczak, kidnapped child. And I thought, wow, that's me. I ran upstairs. My mom was doing something, dishes or something, and I said, hey, I found this in the crawl space. This is about me, right? She just simply said, you were kidnapped. We found you. We love you.
Then, decades later, 48-year-old Paul and his family did DNA testing and discovered that Paul was not related to his parents after all. Investigators had returned the wrong baby to the Fronczak couple all those years ago.
Everything I knew about my life just vanished. And all I thought about was, I'm not their real son. I've got to find the real Paul. That's the only thing I thought about. And that's what started this whole journey. I was able to find my identity, but more importantly, I was able to connect the real Paul with his real mother, Dora. And to me, that made this whole journey, all the heartache and all the tragedy, it was all worthwhile.
Eventually, Paul tracked down his real name, Jack Rosenthal. He found his biological family, and he discovered he has a twin sister, Jill. He also learned that his parents, Gilbert and Marie Rosenthal, had given away both Jack and Jill.
They said that they had given us to the other side of the family to watch for a while, like on a vacation. I found the real Paul. I found out who I am. All that's missing is finding my twin sister, Jill.
And that's where you come in. Does this image look familiar to you? Jill Rosenthal is 57 years old now. She may have a different name and may not know her real identity.
It just takes the right person to see it. So this is very important, and I really hope that people take a look at it, and if they know anything, to reach out and let us know.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about how that whole thing started, Paul.
Well, after I found out I had a twin sister, I really wanted to find her. And I really wanted to do it myself, because once you open a missing persons case and you start working with other agencies, usually you get locked out. And I didn't want to put myself in that situation, but it got down to the wire where I'm like, okay, so every year that goes by is a year that I could probably use some help. So I finally went to Atlantic City, opened a missing persons case, and now I'm working with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Wow. So where are we today?
Where are we today? Well, I've gotten about maybe 30 good leads in since that aired. So right now I'm vetting out people that think they may be possibly Jill. That's always a fun part of the journey, because my saying is never leave a stone unturned, because you never know. I check out every single lead that I get.
Wow. That's just an amazing story. And we're just really excited that you're going to be joining us next year. And, let's talk a little bit about your work out there. I know you've got an organization, right? You want to tell us a little bit about that and the type of work that you're doing?
So basically, when I started this journey, all I wanted to do was find my parents' missing kidnapped child. And then if I could find out who I was in the process, then hopefully that'd be a bonus. So that's how it started. But then people started writing me saying, oh my gosh, I'm in the same situation you are. I have no idea who I am. So I started helping people, because I figured if I can knock on my doors, I can knock on someone else's doors and help them just as well. Because from what I'm being told is a lot of people are having a hard time actually starting this journey. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Bring it. I'm here. Let's do it. Let's find out who you are.
And I think many here that are with us this evening, I mean, this is how we got to where we are. I mean, why we're sitting here. Kara, I think you can speak to that as well. And I know personally that, why I'm here is through my own loss and finding my way and being connected to so many of you and getting that support that here we are. And we just want to connect and help one another. Kara, do you want to speak a little bit about that as well? I mean, for you personally.
Sure. I think the biggest thing is people just don't really understand until it happens to them what it means to learn that you're not who you thought you were. And I have tried to come up with words. Maybe you can help, Paul. And, it's just one of those things that until you go through it, I mean, everybody always says, well, you're still you. And yes, I am still me, but I am totally not still me. And I've read True Identity, and that's definitely something that I got from reading your book in that sense too, the concept of identity and how for all of us, I think on that journey, traveling through that, it's just so crazy. And we need community to help us process through all of it.
That's well said. When this first happened, my ex-wife was like, you know who you are. You're Emma's dad. You're my husband. And I'm like, that's a small part of it. And that's what I am right now. But who am I really? And why am I the way I am? And that's what I really wanted to find out.
I noticed you use that word real. I was looking, on your website and stuff, the real Paul, really. It's such an interesting concept about the word real. Do you have anything else to elaborate a little bit about what that means for you?
Sure. So I was fortunate enough to take another person's life. I lived my life as Paul, and I wasn't Paul. Paul, unfortunately, was kidnapped, and he had a completely different life. And I still feel like I stole his life, because he was the real Paul. I was just an imposter. I was Jack, I was Scott, and then I was bounced in as Paul. So like a proxy, I was a proxy Paul. Be a nice t-shirt, wouldn't it?
I just said proxy Paul. Well, imposter syndrome is definitely something a lot of us feel. I don't think you are alone at all in feeling that. I mean, obviously your journey is very unique in and of itself, but I mean, I know I deal with feeling like an imposter sometime in my new culture. So I do think I was raised thinking I was half Black and found out I'm not. I'm a different ethnicity. And so I do think that sense of being an imposter in somewhere is real to a lot of us as well.
Definitely. How could it not be?
Absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit too about the book. I mean, A True Identity and The Foundling. So you wrote 2 books, and tell us a little bit about that and how those came to be.
Okay, so when this first started, all I wanted to do was find my parents' kidnapped child. And so I went to George Knapp out here, probably the coolest investigator ever, reporter. Like, he's the guy who actually walks the streets kind of thing, and he was into aliens, Area 51, all that stuff that I was really into. So when we started this, we thought, okay, let's just find Paul. And he's like, well, don't you want to know who you are? And then all of a sudden, once the story took off, it went international, like overnight. People started saying, maybe you should write a book kind of like like an inspiration to help other people who are in that situation. It might help them get started. So a book was never even on my horizon. And now I have two. And there may be a third one now because there's so much more still happening. And to me, if it helps one person start their journey and find answers, then I feel like I've done more than I could have ever asked for.
Yeah. And I think Jennifer, thank you for putting that in the chat room where anyone would like to go ahead and purchase the book that's listed on Amazon. All right. So the links are in the chat room. And then, you know, that's true, Paul, with the books. I mean, sometimes the idea of writing a book, you don't have it, but you just walk into it, and it's based on experience. It's based on your personal story. And then you're right. I mean, as long as when you're sharing your story, you connect with one person. That's what it's all about. So two books, that's pretty awesome.
Right. And it's like, I wanted to write it like you were actually on the journey with me, because I was writing the book while I was still knocking on doors and, sneaking in hospitals and digging graves and stuff. So I wanted that experience. As soon as I'd go through a day, I just write it down, and that's why it feels like a journey, because it really was a journey.
Mm-hmm. And then you have the documentary.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. That's pretty awesome too.
Yeah, that was, it was quite a process, because as we were doing it, COVID happened. So it really threw a wrench in our momentum, I guess. And it was supposed to be a theatrical release. Then it got pushed over to CNN, and now it's on Discovery Plus. But it's up for an Emmy, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. As long as people like it, and like I said, if it can inspire someone to really start their own journey, then it's all worth it.
Mm-hmm. And how long did it take you to do the documentary?
72 years.
2 years.
No, 72 years. I'm kidding. No, it took us almost 2.5 years.
70 years plus 2 years.
yeah. We lost about a year with COVID. Just everything is shut down. It was horrible.
And in the stages of that, I mean, did you just come up with, what was your original idea with the documentary? What was the goal of?
The goal was to, I would have rather had like a 12-part series, because it barely scratched the surface of my story. But the idea was to actually be on the journey with me as things unfold, and to see how you would handle it and see how it affects people around you. Because, as when these things happen, it's just not us that it happens to. It's everyone else that was involved in that story.
I think those ripple effects are so huge, and people don't really think about those impacts, because most people making these discoveries are adults already. So we have the families that we've created, we have the families that have raised us, and then we have this new genetic family. So that ripple effect is huge.
It really is. And, the fact that we actually found the student nurse who was in the room when the kidnapper came in and kidnapped Paul, or the babysitter that actually saw Jill and I in our cages. It's mind-boggling that these people still carry this with them today, and that was 50 plus years ago.
So the documentary, so it's up for an Emmy, and you're going to be where on? Is it Thursday? Is it the 29th?
Yeah, it's going to be in New York City, right in Manhattan. Yeah, pretty excited.
You're pretty pumped up for that, right?
Yeah, I am.
It's that's really super exciting. Okay, so and now we also know that the CC Moore, for those of you that don't know CC, and I think everybody here knows her, you've got a relationship with CC. She's part of your story as well, correct, Paul?
Yeah, Cece, she reached out when this thing the very first got going. She reached out to me, and I was so inundated with tips and leads that I kind of bypassed her message, because number one, I didn't know what genealogy really was. I was on a mission to find Paul. And so I did a couple of radio shows, and she reached out again, and she offered her services. And so I took her up on it, her and her team of DNA detectives, these wonderful women that all they wanted to do was help. And they put in so many tireless hours and just nonstop research to find these answers. So Cece, she's the most amazing woman I know.
And she stays pretty busy these days. We were talking a little bit earlier how we used to be able to text her, send her an email, and we'd be able to contact her, but she's really done some amazing work, and her outreach is just phenomenal. So she's a little tough to get a hold of these days.
Yeah, she's still doing finding her roots. She's working for Parabon, and they're every day it seems like they're finding another killer or somebody. It's amazing.
Yeah, the DNA, I mean, that is just changed everyone's lives. I mean, the amount of DNA testing, I don't even know what it is. Kara, do you even have those numbers?
Yeah, it's 1 in 7 Americans have taken an over-the-counter DNA test, and about a quarter of those find close relatives. So it's big, and CC's so busy. So luckily we have a lot of other nonprofits and organizations that have popped up that are helping, Joe on the corner figure out his identity. DNA Angels is a nonprofit that does that. Search Angels is another one. So there's a lot of places out there that are helping people for free find their family, which is a huge, I find it interesting, Paul, that that wasn't your first thought. I love that it's to help your mom find her son. But without finding who we are, it's so hard to rebuild our identity, right?
That's it too. And I mean, it's when you get news like that, it's like, and you know that something really bad happened to your parents, having their child kidnapped. There's no way I would think about myself. I just wanted to find what happened to their child because something really bad happened to them that was never solved.
I was looking at the picture on your website of you and your brother that you grew up with.
Yeah. David.
Yeah. Sometimes people say to me, they're like, how did you not know? Did you not look at a picture? Like the Sesame Street song, which one of these things is not like the other? Did you, now that you go back and look at some of those family photos and think about some of those family moments before, do you think about them a little bit differently?
Yeah, it's funny when you're growing up, you never think that you're not part of that family because you were told that you're their child. So why would you think anything different, right? But I never felt like Paul. Even being called Paul doesn't really feel right to me. So when I was growing up, I was completely different than Dave. Had a different relationship with my parents than he did. He had this certain easiness with them, and I never had that. Like I always had to work at it. And I'm like, why is this? And now, of course, now we know.
Right. I'm sure you've been asked this before. I changed my name. I added my birth father's name, and I was curious about you moving forward with Paul, given what you just said too. And you were christened a different name. You've had so many different names that you could be in your life. I just was wondering if you wanted to say anything about being Paul.
Yeah. And of course, going from Jewish to Catholic, I was baptized twice. I was an altar boy, right? So my close friends and my people at work, they call me Jack because I like Jack. It feels better. But my mom, out of respect, I'm going to be Paul, at least in the interim, because she raised me as Paul, and I love my mom, and I'll do anything for her. Yeah.
How did when all this happened, Paul, when you first found out, and tell us a little bit about your parents and how they handled that?
So when I first found out that I wasn't Paul, you mean?
Correct.
Back in 2012. Yeah. So the whole DNA thing, I wanted to find out for sure for a couple of years, but it was out of my price range. It wasn't very common back then in 2012, right? To get DNA done. And so when I finally asked them to do it, I think I caught them off guard, and they said, sure, we'll do it. And we all did the tests. And when they got back to Chicago, they said, don't mail it in. And I had to. Once I had those samples, I waited a while, but my mind was already made up. I had to find the truth because you can't be that close to it and then just sweep it away. Yeah. Right. So after I did this, we didn't talk for almost 2 years. They were furious, and they thought I was doing it to find better parents because I wasn't happy with them. And it couldn't have been further from the truth. I wanted to thank them for saving my life, and I wanted to find their child. And it took a long time to make amends and to be on the same page.
Wow, that must have been difficult. 2 years.
2 years.
And we do hear that in the adoption community a lot though, right? I mean, that's in a way pretty common that the adoptive parents sometimes will step away.
Yeah. It's really a shame, because if my parents would have been on that journey with me to find Paul, it would have been that much more joyous. It would have been more like a whole family journey, into hell. It was horrible, but
Yeah.
Well, plus they're your parents, and you lean on them for support, and so it's quite the journey and process that you're going through. So to have their support through that time, I'm sure would have been much better. I mean, we see that too in MPEs as well, where the raising family sometimes has a hard time with reaching out to genetic family.
yeah.
And then it all
It's a
goes
shame.
back to education and talking about things, right? The education. So
Yeah.
it's okay to talk, that it's this whole secrecy thing, the whole secrets and lies.
That's it. Buried secrets.
Yeah, buried secrets. So let's talk a little bit about Summit. Let's talk about Summit. Kara,
Okay.
you're back.
I'm always
Paul,
ready
you're
to talk
coming
about
to
something.
Louisville. Yeah, we're excited that you're coming to Louisville. Have you ever been here before?
I've driven through it
Oh, well, that counts, I guess. But
really fast. No, I'm kidding.
It's a lot of fun, Paul. You're going to have a great time. We had so much fun when I visited. I had never been there before, being a West Coast gal.
Yeah, I'm excited. It doesn't matter where you are. You can always have a great time. It's all what you make of it. And, it's Louisville. That's part of history.
Oh, no, it's Louisville. I've been corrected.
Louisville. Like in marbles.
Louisville.
And it'll be you and 350 others who have experienced somewhat similar or impacted by very similar things that you have.
I can't wait to meet every single one.
Yeah.
I know they can't wait to meet you.
There's been a lot of planning that's gone into the summit and continues to evolve. So we're looking at, and we keep saying it's going to be an epic event with these 3 communities, and it's the first of its kind, and in a really cool city. And we've just got amazing speakers, keynote panels, over 40 workshops. It's just going to be phenomenal. So,
Sounds
And
fantastic.
thankfully, we're pre-recording these, because I know as we were like inviting people, we just sent out all the invites to the speakers, and so we're waiting to hear back. I was like, I want to go to that one. I want to go to that one. But I can only go to 1 per time slot. There will be 5 choices per time slot. Obviously, everybody will come and listen to you, Paul, in the morning. But after that, people have all these different choices. And I know I'm having a hard time trying to decide where I want to go. So luckily, we're pre-recording them so people can go ahead and watch them later too.
That's great.
Yeah.
yeah, and this whole thing of joining the 3 communities came from, is Leslie with us tonight? Leslie Pate McKinnon?
I
Is she up here tonight?
she asked me to do something. I got her out of office notice. So I wonder if she's doing something else this evening.
But yeah, she was the one that introduced our organization with Right to Know. And this was her dream, was to bring these communities together and do some type of a summit or conference. So this is over a year now?
Over a year. And, Leslie was so right. She just nailed it on the head about how much we can support and uplift each other and elevate. I love that in the elevate each other. I think that's so important in working with the different communities, because we have so much overlap, even from the raising families. I mean, all these different ripple effects we were talking about, they all have similar impacts. And I just can't wait to be with everybody and talk about our experiences. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So we're looking at March 30th, April 1st, and those tickets are going to be going on sale soon. Here we go. Untangling Our Roots.
I wonder if that's possible to untangle.
Takes a lot of work.
It sure does. So Paul, I was curious, you said you've had lots of people reach out to you. Do you want to share, obviously you don't have to share names or anything, but I'm curious about like somebody's journey that sticks with you, that who've reached out to you in these either, I don't know if you get a lot of donor conceived people reaching out to you or just adoptees or people like me who learned their dad wasn't their dad, but I'd be curious if there was a journey that has stuck with you.
There's been probably a good 10 or 20 that have really stuck with me that I really want to help. One of them was this girl who thought she was actually Jill.
Oh.
She lives in New York, and she had kind of a shady background. And her friend had saw the first composite that I had done a while ago, and she looked exactly like the picture. And so we started talking, and we had so many things in common. The way we handle situations, the way we were brought up and things. And unfortunately, DNA ruled her out. But her journey is something I really want to trace the steps on. And then I had another person in Australia that has just a crazy story about, hidden boxes full of information and, kidnappings. And, there's just so many good stories out there that if we find the answers to, I think it'll bring more people out that really have questions about their identity that will feel more comfortable about actually finding answers.
Yeah. And sort of alleviating that sense of shame, wherever it may be that families, I feel like, have about telling the truth, either because they were infertile or they had, there was an assault in the person's creation, or, like me, I'm the product of a one-night stand. Sort of all those concepts hold some sense of shame, which is why I think a lot of families hold on to secrets. And then the more we tell these stories, I feel like the less shame there is. Every time someone talks about their truth, we just take that sense of shame down just a little bit more for the next person. Absolutely.
It makes it a little more easier for them to actually come forward and go, you know what, I want to find answers. I have doubts, and like my parents, my adopted parents, the Fronczaks, back then, people didn't talk about things, it wasn't someone else's business. No matter how messed up it might have been or how confused you were, you didn't tell anybody. And that's how things just got swept under the rug.
Well, and as we say, at our nonprofit, you have a right to know. You have a right to know your identity. And sometimes it's hard to balance those rights with parents' sense of privacy, old senses of what's appropriate and proper to talk about. But our sense of our right to know is so important.
Or criminal activity.
Yes.
Just put it out there.
Hopefully the statute of limitations has passed, so it makes people a little bit more comfortable coming forward about those things in finding out the truth.
Yeah.
And Paul, all these people that you're meeting when you're speaking and they're sharing their stories with you, what really surprised you the most when you're out and you're talking with people that you're finding out?
Okay, number one, the fact that people really know my story, like people are really paying attention to it. And that makes me so happy because I know it's helping people. Number two is that I'm still astounded at how many people really don't know who they are. I had no idea when I first started this. There's a lot of people who just don't know. And I think as the years go by, DNA gets bigger, people start understanding that it's not a bad thing to know the truth. I think that number is going to get smaller. And I think that's a great thing. Because we all have a right to know who we are. And finding out who I really was, it helped me be a better person who I am now. Because I had behaviors and things that I didn't know where they came from. And you want to be the best person that you can be because we're here for such a short time.
Well, we were talking about those impacts too. I know you have a daughter who's the best kid ever. My sons are the best kids ever too. Yeah, I mean, so I think about that. Like, I get angry sometimes for my sons. Like, I want the truth, and I want it for them too. Like, they deserve to know who they are, and they deserve their medical information. We see plenty of cases where I'm going to use the word offspring. Sometimes terminology, I upset people, but we need to use words to talk about. I know we're adults here, but I am talking about my kids who are younger. But there can be long-term consequences for offspring if you don't know your medical history, and sometimes it can be deadly, which is really important for my kids. That's where I feel that way for.
Well, that was one of the main reasons I wanted to find the truth, because after I had my daughter, doctor always asks you, what's your medical history? And I spout off what my parents have always told me. And I really started thinking, am I doing an injustice to my daughter? Am I really Paul? And is this really my medical history? And, I'm glad I checked. I'm glad I'd started this because my real parents both died at 61. And it's pretty close down the road there. So it kind of woke me up to really get things, checked out and, stay as healthy as possible and all those things.
I think you're past that, aren't you?
61? Oh,
not yet.
Nowhere near it. Nowhere near it.
Another,
No.
20 years?
Okay. Yeah, I'll take that.
Well, it does make you think about all the things, that is, I don't know. Did you have that conversation with your doctor? I did with mine. Oh, by the way, half my medical history that I've been telling you is now wrong. Did your doctor go, huh?
I'll tell you what happened. After I told my doctor the true story, she ran me through all these tests and I was on treadmills and my insurance was just like, what the heck's going on here? Right? We're not covering that, but I feel a lot better. I feel a lot better.
It never ceases to amaze me that with all this, when we talk about medical history, that we don't have more doctors and people in the medical profession involved in this. I don't know.
Think.
Speak to that, but you would think that somebody would say, you're right. And, so many of my patients are adoptees and we're a blank, it's a blank slate. And how can we change this? And it just never ceases to amaze me that we don't have that.
And I think insurance companies, this is my big epiphany. I just got back from DC. We were lobbying for some new federal legislation for donor conceived individuals. And let's get the insurance companies on board. They have a lot of money, and
Exactly.
really not knowing your medical history costs the industry a ton of money. So I think that's the next kind of way to go for this, Marcie. I'm with you.
But honestly, it's hard enough now to get a test that you need done. Imagine trying to get things that, hey, I found out that this may be happening to me. No, they're not going to cover that.
But maybe they'll help us gain access to our medical rights, our medical history rights, because they understand the financial consequences of not having it.
That would be perfect. That makes sense.
Yeah. Big pockets. Let's make them help us.
Yeah, I just
Totally
think
agree.
if we could get the insurance companies in the medical industry behind us, what a huge change that would be, what an impact that would make.
I would be on that board with you. You start that. I'll be part of that.
Okay, first volunteer, right?
Yep.
I love it. If you're like me, you volunteer for way too much. I'm
Yeah.
always like, hey, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Renee. Save them money. And I think they'll get on. They'll be all over it. I totally agree. We'll find out if we get that when we hopefully have hearings in the spring.
Okay, so we're going to be opening up to questions here in just a few minutes. But before that, Kara, this might be the good time to go ahead and talk about the winner. You want to talk a little bit about that? And then I'll just jump in here. Paul, we'll just let you sit back for just a few minutes. What we did is when we filmed in Louisville last month, we put out a challenge to those of you that watched the recording, and Kara and I came up with 4 questions about, and if you were paying attention, you could go ahead and submit the answers to these 4 questions, and we were going to draw at random one winner who got them all right.
Wow. That's fantastic.
So, yeah. So
Yeah, there were little hints, little social media hints.
Yeah.
Things. I think people were guessing, sending me private little messages. Oh, I know who that is. I know who this is. People knew who you were because I was talking about true identity, which I listened to it on tape. I loved listening to it on tape. It was great.
Thanks.
So everybody, if you don't, right now my bandwidth is so narrow. I need to listen to a book. I used to sit down and read tons of books. I don't know what happened, but definitely get the book and listen to it, because it is such a great thing to listen to. And you get sucked in, like you're following everything. So and I loved that about listening to it. So anyway, everybody guessed these little things and they sent their answers to Marcie. And then Marcie, you didn't have a top hat to pull them out of, but something like that, right, Marcie?
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, I drew them at random based on the winning answers. So we just want to thank everybody that participated. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and read these questions. I think that would just bring everybody up to speed. And if you do know the answer, you could go ahead and put it in the chat room. Why don't we just do that? So the first one was, who is the stranger in my jeans? So if you're with us this evening and you know the answer to that, go ahead and put it in the chat room.
Who wrote that book? All right.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I got that right, Bill.
So
Okay.
I'm just going to say, Marcie, he also wrote a follow-up book, Strangers No More. And so have you read Bill's book, Paul?
No, I haven't, but I've read things about it.
Yeah.
Great
so
reviews.
You'll get to meet him.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and I loved his first book. I haven't ordered the second one, but it sounds like he's got some reunion going on. Has anybody read the second one who's here? I can't see everybody, so I don't know. Did anybody say they have? You did, Barbara. So is he in a good reunion? They're both a great read. Everybody says they're a great read. Okay, good. So I guess I'll go out. See, I'll add that to my book with Kiss, and I'll read Strangers No More. Fabulous read. Excellent. Okay, what's the next one, Marcie?
Okay, the second one, and we should have 100% on this one. Who wrote about their true identity? I can't imagine who that would be.
Me neither. I love that title because I think about true identity, Paul, a lot. Like, what
Thank
is
you,
my
Yep.
what is my true identity? I mean, it's such an interesting, fascinating question that I think those of us with a DNA surprise focus on way, 10 times more than the rest of the population.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do it. I still do it.
Me too. Almost daily. I have pictures of my raising mom and my birth father behind my computer with me to help me remember when I get a little bit lost in who I am on some of those days when days are a little bit harder.
That's great.
Yeah, true identity, something that we all spend a lot of time thinking about. Okay, what's next?
All right. Brave New Human.
That one was a little bit harder, although in your last happy hour, someone said they had read that book and enjoyed it.
Yes.
Yes, you're right, Cassandra. Sarah Dingle wrote that book. It's an amazing read. If you haven't read it yet, Brave New Humans, I really recommend it. I think it's amazing. Representing the donor conceived peeps. Yes, you are. Thank you so much. And it's a great book. I hope everyone gets it. Like the person who was there last week, they said it was great. It is.
Okay. Thank you, Cassandra. All right. And then the book, Somebody's Daughter.
Now, someone said I was too tricksy with that one.
Yeah, that one was a little tricksy. Let's see who's going to come up with that. Yes, Tina Brown, Zara Phillips. That's correct. So those were your 4 answers. And I'll go ahead at this time. And I think the winner is with us tonight, but she does not know it. So we want to give a big shout out and congratulations to Lynn Grubb. You got all of them right, and you were the drawn winner.
Woo-hoo.
Lynn, where are you? Say a few words.
Hi. Hi, Paul.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, everyone. It's so great to see you. And I'm just so happy that I won. I entered as soon as we got off the happy hour. I was like, I'm going to do this or I'm going to forget. So thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to meeting everyone that I haven't already met in person in Louisville. And I love that we're going to be with Right to Know. I'm just so glad that we're expanding our reach into other arenas with other people who of unknown parentage or misattributed parentage. So
It's
thank you.
fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you, Paul.
Lynn,
Yeah.
you want to take like a little 2 minutes and just briefly let everyone know a little bit about your story, just real quick about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, I'm kind of an old timer now. I started with Indiana Adoptee Network. That's how I met Marcie in 2017. And I was able to speak, and I didn't know anyone. I think I knew Pam. That's it. And so yeah, it's been a wild ride. And Lorene just messaged me, "Who's Lynn Grubb?" She's trying to embarrass me. Anyway, sorry, I don't know how to summarize my story, but I will say, and I put this in the chat for Paul to read later, that I had an unknown father case that lasted years and years and years. And when the Foundling first came out, I read that and it gave me hope. I knew who Cece Moore was, and I was super jealous that she was working on his case and not mine. But good for you, Paul. It sounds like you needed the help. I had some search angels that helped me as well. And there several are in this room right here who've been along the journey with me. And I'm very grateful to them because, as you know, Paul, or anyone who's had a long search, there's periods where you can't search. It just becomes too much. And then you emotionally just need to detach for a while. And I think the support system kind of pulls you through that. And so that really, I can say that having support was probably the most important thing about my journey. So, and I did finally figure out who my father was in 2020. And unfortunately, he died in 2021. But I did publish a memoir. It's Audible at The Adoption Experience, if anybody wants to listen.
I do.
more info. Thank you, Paul. I would love for you to do that. So is that kind of what you were looking at, Marcie, or is there anything else you'd like me to
real quick to
discuss?
share with people that don't know who you are. So
Yeah, I'm adopted. Guess I should mention that.
Hey.
Thanks for that.
So thank you. I'm so excited.
and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's go ahead now. I'd like to end the recorded portion of this evening, and let's open it up to questions from all of you.
I had one that came to me directly.